Welcome, scholars. In this video, we're going to do the string compareTo method. This is one of the more tricky methods out of the bunch that we have for strings, because this one you have to think a little bit, but it's not that bad. You're comparing two strings. That's basically what you're doing. The name suggests it. And the way you compare two strings is you're comparing which one appears first alphabetically, which character appears first alphabetically when you compare two strings. And we'll be worrying about alphabets. So for example, if I have string name 1 equals Dwayne Johnson, and string name 2 equals blackbirds. When we compare these two, so I'm going to print out system.out dot println name 1 compared to name 2. The output in this situation, what's the output going to be? Well, we're comparing name 1 to name 2. Name 1, we look at the first characters. If they're equal to one another, we go to the next one, but they're not equal, so we can compare them. Since they're not equal, we can compare, and name 1 appears 2 characters after name 2. The first character of name 1 appears 2 letters after name 2. Name 2's first character. So if you look at A, B, C, D, D appears 2 later. So in this situation, the output is going to be +2. Now, if you were to do the system and then name 2 dot compare to name 1, excuse the bad handwriting, but basically what's going to happen is it's going to be -2, because B appears before D. And how much before? How many places before? 2 places before. It's just going to be -2. Now, if I were to change one of these strings, I'll erase this one, by the way. If we were to change one of these strings, say I want to keep Dwayne Johnson, so I'll just say Dwayne Johnson, and say these are identical, then in this situation, we would have the output of, take a guess, it would be 0, because they're exactly identical. So there's no differences. There's no placements that we have to worry about like we did here. Now, I chose 2 strings on purpose that are close to one another. When we had Blackbird and Dwayne Johnson, they're close to one another. But you could have strings that are not close to one another, but the computer worries about that. You don't have to worry about that. You just need to know the general idea and how the program works, how the method works. Let's jump over to the compiler, IDE.
All right, so now we're going to be covering the compareTo method. So first, we're going to start off with creating 2 strings. So our first string is going to be string bird. So string bird equals, say equals woodpecker. So woodpecker, and then give a semicolon, and string bird 1 is, or bird 1 is equal to owl. And give a semicolon. So now what we're gonna do is print out the compareTo method, and the compareTo method is returning a number, as Pranav referred to earlier. So if it's equal to 0, then it basically means that the strings are the same. If it's less than 0, then it means the first thing that you specify comes before the second thing. And what I mean by this is the first thing in this case is bird. And then the second thing that we specify in arguments is bird 1. So the first thing comes before second thing. But if it's greater than 0, then you could say the first thing comes after the second thing to make it more clear. And to make sure that this is clear, can you highlight what what I mean by first thing in the case of the system out print line statement? So the first thing, that is the first thing. So if bird comes before bird one, and can you highlight the second thing, which is the one that you pass in as an argument in the comparative method? So bird one in this case is the second argument. So what it's basically doing is comparing bird to bird one alphabetically, like which one comes before, if it comes after, or if they're the same. So now we're going to print out the result in our compiler. So if you run it, we're going to get a result of 8. Now let's check for this. So let's now substitute the values of the variable. So we're going to say woodpecker dot compared to owl. Now, does woodpecker come after owl alphabetically? Yes, it does. And since the first thing comes after the second thing, therefore it's going to return a result that's greater than 0. Now let's test this out to make sure. So when you get a result of 8, it's going to compare W to 0. Oh, like how far they are in the alphabet. So now let's compare it. Let's start at O. So O, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W. So now we're gonna have to count that out, and we see it's gonna return 8. So let's count it out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And therefore that's why it results 8. It basically returns the distance between the two letters in the alphabet. So now we're gonna switch those two around. So in the system out print line statement, let's now do bird one. So bird one dot compare to bird. So system out print ln bird one dot compare to bird. And now let's run our program. So what this is gonna output is going to be -8. The reason for this is because the first thing comes before the second thing, right? And so basically owl comes before woodpecker, since O comes before W in the alphabet. And that's what makes it easier to visualize what compareTo method does. But for the last thing, let's now switch bird one to woodpecker to demonstrate how it's going to output 0. So woodpecker, and now let's run the output. So this output should return 0 because both of them are the same strings. W and W are the same alphabetically, and therefore it turns 0. So this is kind of similar to dot equals, where if you compare both of them, then it is true. And when you do bird one compared to bird, and they're the two same strings, then it's going to return 0 in that case. So that basically also highlights the difference between compareTo and equals, where compareTo is slightly a bit more complicated than equals, but when you do dot equals and compareTo output 0, they kind of work the same way. And so that's basically what the compareTo method does for us. Thanks.